So, back to what I was saying. You are soon enough. And you know, I sometimes think about, you know, President of the United States.
Kamala Harris, over the last couple of weeks, has been promoting her book, 107 Days. And she was met this week during an event, I believe it was in Chicago, by some protesters who stormed in there over her lack of role in trying to stop the conflict in Gaza. And at one point she shouted, "I'm not the president." And a lot of people have been defending her. They've been saying, you know, why are they going after a person who's not in office? Why don't they spend their time protesting Trump? And, you know, just that type of ilk. First off, I'll say the protesters, the Gaza protesters, have targeted Trump. He went to some restaurant recently, you know, within the last, I'd say, it had to have been the last couple of months, where protesters came in there and yelled at him and compared him to a certain German historical figure. But I have to always start stuff with Harris off since the election by saying this. She was given an unfair situation of having to run for president and win with only about, what was that, a quarter of a year. She was someone who got put in this position of being vice president, which is an extremely difficult job to directly become president from. That's why we haven't had a incumbent VP become president in over 30 years. You know, I could be very sympathetic towards her when it came to those things. But when people get upset over how her campaign went and the fact that, you know, Trump won, you have to acknowledge that the person who played the biggest role in her losing that election was her. I mean, it's that simple. You can't, the candidate cannot blame the voters for not supporting them, especially when they made no overtures towards those people. But what I also kind of want to say here is that I would be so much more sympathetic to Harris, right? Like, because I get where people don't really like seeing her or some other person who's not an incumbent politician, you know, being heckled while they're giving a speaking event or doing some other, you know, thing as a private citizen. But you have to also understand that similarly to Obama, and we did a video about him as well and his whole, you know, how powerless he is. The issue I have here is that these people are not truly retired. Like Obama, you know, was a former president, he's been out of office for 8 years. But when it comes to campaigning and talking trash about Trump, he has no problem running his mouth, right? Being involved with this stuff, even as someone who is supposedly retired. Harris is someone that we all believe is either going to run for president in 3 years or is at least heavily considering it. And she spent several months, right? Just no one knew what she thought, what she was up to, and nobody bothered her as a result. But to go on this extended hiatus and then only start appearing in the public again to basically throw the president you served under the bus for your election loss, and to then only now start to criticize things. Again, this is the issue, that these people, when they use the excuse of being a private citizen, one of their things they like to do is pretend that in being a private citizen, they are not still a public figure, which is complete and utter BS. Harris is, since starting to promote her book, been coming out more, appearing time after time again, giving all of her different critiques of Trump. And it's like, okay, if she's going to be a visible force, she's fair game to criticize. So it's not like, oh, Harris is sitting in her little bunker somewhere and people are tracking her down and they're, standing outside her house with protest signs. No, she is someone who is still in the public limelight and is, as a result, still bound to be critiqued just like anybody else. Now, the other issue here, and I said this during the Obama video as well, there's a lot of similarities here, is that when Harris says I'm not the president, it's part of that same idea, right? That you have to be a politician who's in office to do something, when that's simply not true. Harris has a net worth of $8 million. She has 20 million followers on both Instagram and Twitter, about 19,000 on one of them, but you get the idea, close to 20 million. I said 19,000, 19 million. And she's someone who I think we can pretty much agree has a higher name recognition than about 95% of sitting politicians, whether they be congressmen, senators, governors, whichever position you'd like to refer to. As someone who has such a large reach, right? As someone who, in having such a large net worth, she presumably is not worried about, oh man, if I say something in favor of Palestinians, I'm gonna no longer be able to work, and then I'll have to sleep, on the sidewalk, or so she's not worried about any financial repercussions. Although maybe she's worried about her husband getting mad. So what I'm conveying here is that if I were Harris and I were a politician who was trying to sell a book and maybe run for president in 3 years, and I had the net worth that she has and the amount of followers that she has, I'd be right there with the protesters. Hey, let's go to a Trump event and stand out, not, go and crash it, but stand around there, protest it. Hey, let me go to my house and do live streams about Palestine and raise money for that cause. I guarantee you, if Harris had chosen to take the side of the human rights people, right, the ones who are on the side of ending a genocide, there would be almost no issue whatsoever with protesters at her events. And that's kind of what the issue has been, which is that you have these politicians who are, by virtue of just how much money they have, insulated from the consequences of their own electoral failures and the effect that their policies that they enacted have on other people, right? So Harris is not sitting here sweating bullets because, oh man, Trump won and federal workers are getting laid off. No, she doesn't care because she's taken care of. She's fine. She has enough money to last her several lifetimes over. And that's what kills me so much about her public image after the election, where you have this lady who went and hid in her bunker for months, and now she's reemerged, not to become some critic of Trump who pushes the U.S. in a more fair direction, but to go on a book tour where she gets to talk trash about the various other people that were involved in the election from a year ago, or almost a year ago, I should say, and then selectively choose when she wants to be involved with this stuff. And that's what's really eating away at me. Just the idea of, well, I could be more involved with this stuff. I could take the side of the people who many believe tanked my chances of winning the election, but I'm gonna just sit here and put out my book so I can enrich myself further. And if they get mad at me on my tour, well, I guess I'll just have to pretend that I have no power with all of my money and all of my followers. Don't ever let somebody who tells you, with the net worth that she has and the following that she has, tell you that they don't have any power. That is complete and utter ridiculous trash. You know how many politicians would be dying to have 20 million followers on Twitter or Instagram, or hell, even a quarter of that. I mean, it's wild that, again, you have these people who they're not in office anymore, but they are still very well-known public figures, and they want to be involved with politics in a specific type way, right? Where they can come out and maybe they talk trash about Trump, and sell a book every couple of years, like Obama, like Harris, and I'm sure like Biden soon because he's working on his own memoir. But when it comes to actually standing for something and taking the heat in terms of not appearing to be supportive of a cause that clearly affects a lot of people or is bothering a lot of people, they're fine. They're fine with just, that person yells at me for 2 minutes, get them out of here. I can pretend I can just go back to pretending it's not existing. I'm telling you, if I were Harris, and I really, and she's serious about wanting to be president, and running in 2028, she should be the main one criticizing Trump and siding with the protesters and all the other groups that are trying to fight back against what he's doing. We're not talking about her running for governor or any of this other crap. As a private citizen, she could simply attend events or put out a tweet and get millions of eyes on it. But she doesn't do that because, again, these people with their large swaths of wealth simply do not care. The most important thing to Kamala from when she lost the election in November all the way up until now, there's two things. Getting her own little rest and relaxation with this extended vacation she had for months, and enriching herself further with some book where she blames everybody but herself for why she's not in the White House right now.